Before January of 2019, I knew very little of Bogota, and I knew very little of Colombia. Isn't that a perfect reason to go there and start a bicycle tour? I thought so.
Hello and welcome to Bicycle Touring Talk. This is episode number 123, but it's also the beginning of a new series. I am George Schlackegg. On January 4th, 2019, Barbara and I boarded a plane destined for Bogota, Colombia. It was a big deal for us because neither one of us had been to that country ever before. Why Colombia, you might ask? Well, I had heard a lot of good things about it from people who had visited there. It was also a step further south for myself after having been across much of Central America by bike. You may have heard of the Darien Gap. The Pan American Highway does not cross the border between Panama and Colombia. There's no good way to get from Panama to Colombia via a land border. I've heard a lot of stories about this oddity and know that it's got to do with the history of Panama becoming an independent country after having been a province of Colombia. The United States were involved, and it's got a lot to do with the construction of the Panama Canal. I have no idea what this Darien Gap actually looks like today, but ask any locals and they'll usually advise you to not even think about going there by bike. I've heard of cyclists taking boat rides from the east coast of Panama to Cartagena, or flights. Flights to Bogota from Canada were relatively affordable in early 2019. We got our tickets during a no BS Black Friday sale a month or so before. I had spent time studying maps of Bogota and the surroundings online, but even the best map can't get you a reliable impression of the various parts of town. Where were we gonna stay, and how would we know what areas were safe for us to hang out in? And we had no clue. The first chore was booking a place for the first few nights. We figured that 4 would be sufficient to get used to the surroundings, get the bikes in order, and figure out a way to leave town. A very affordable place with good reviews too popped up on booking.com, and a check on the map revealed that it was close to the airport too. So there you go, I just booked it with a few clicks of a button on the computer. Done. The reservation was made. Oh my God, what did I do? The idea was to cycle all the way from Bogota to the northern coast of Colombia, perhaps Santa Marta, Barranquilla, maybe Cartagena too. The route was to be more or less along the Magdalena River, which would mean that the prevailing grades would be descents and a good part of our journey would be flat terrain. All assumptions, but I had looked on Google Maps Street View extensively and all of it seemed fine. First though, we had to get to Bogota, and that in itself was quite a journey. We had booked a hotel near the Edmonton airport for the night before our departure because our first flight departed at 6 in the morning with destination Toronto. We hauled all our luggage to that hotel the day before using my trusted work truck. Yes, that's the one that got stolen recently. The bikes were packed pretty much in one piece into clear plastic bags provided by Air Canada. I'm not sure if bags like that are even still available because even Air Canada's guidelines don't mention that option. But they have one big advantage, and that is that you have to take no parts of your bike, except for the pedals. They fit pretty much any bike. After dropping off Barbara and all our luggage, I drove the truck back to the house and then made my way back by LRT and bus. Yes, I left the truck in the back driveway for 2 months straight. No problem. But that's another video altogether. But hey, just getting to that hotel was quite a journey, especially in early January. It took the better part of a day. Our Toronto-bound flight left Edmonton as scheduled at 6 a.m. We only managed to grab a quick Tim Hortons breakfast before boarding. Our stopover in Toronto was supposed to be just over 3.5 hours, enough time to grab some lunch, but Pearson Airport was extremely crowded, with parts of it under renovation. So it took us a while to find our way to the right gate at the international terminal. We ended up at Tim Hortons again, consuming more of their food once we got close to that gate. When we finally arrived there was still over an hour to spare. According to the departure board, the flight was expected to be on time. I don't know the exact times, but by the time we actually boarded the plane, it was much later than expected. And to top it off, once we were on there, we had to get off again because there was a problem with the airplane, and then we had to get onto another plane. Instead of arriving in Bogota at 9:15 p.m. as scheduled, we arrived there around midnight. And as common with international travel, there were delays at the passport and customs check, as well as an extra fee to pay that no one had told us about. Long story short, by the time we left the terminal, it was past 1:30. The place we had booked was close to the airport, but still a 20-minute drive away because of the traffic patterns near that area. We had given the flight information to our host, but only via booking.com, so we really couldn't count on checking into that place at all. Here we were with a large suitcase each, our carry-on, and the bikes. Of course, van taxis were available, and we were ready to take one. But our room wasn't exactly in a big hotel, and we were unfamiliar with the address system in the Bogota neighborhoods, and even the van driver only had a rough idea where that place might be. So we found ourselves cruising through a dark neighborhood in the middle of the night. It was pretty spooky, and Barbara almost freaked.
And I'm wondering if the cab driver is just going to dump us off in the middle of nowhere and we're in a strange place, and I'm thinking, oh. And then I hear a voice, and we were sitting in the van, and I'm saying to George, well, are we in the right place? Because I absolutely do not want to be dropped off in the middle of nowhere, and George is trying to reassure me, and all I can think of is being picked up by a bunch of hitmen or something. So my heart was really beating.
When the driver finally stopped in front of a building indicating that we had arrived, our first reaction was, no, there's no way.
We were going in like places that were so deep into the city that I was wondering, where is the hotel? Because usually you get a big flashing sign. Like, there was none of that. It was, and then when we were in like a very narrow street, and I thought maybe, like I was scared, yeah, for sure.
This was somebody's house, but nothing was indicating that it was a bed and breakfast or a guest house. We really thought we were going to be stuck out in the street, perhaps the perfect prey for robbers. Where the hell was this hostel or whatever? Thankfully, the driver didn't abandon us right away. He actually rang the doorbell for us, but the place was completely dark. To our surprise, a light came on and a lady in a morning gown opened the gate. I'm not sure who was more tired, Barbara and I, or that lady. Marta was her name, as we learned a bit later. We left the bikes downstairs in the carport, but our room was on the 4th floor. This place didn't have an elevator. Bogota is in the mountains at an elevation of 2,600 meters. That's about 8,600 feet. Carrying 2 suitcases up those stairs made me feel like I was totally out of shape. How were we going to cycle in this climate? And by the way, nights in Bogota aren't that warm. Due to the high elevation, you can expect nighttime temperatures to dip below 10 degrees Celsius or 50 Fahrenheit. Our room had no heat, but there were some wool blankets available. After giving us access and showing us the essentials, Marta left us to ourselves, indicating she'd see us later that morning. We had made it to Bogota and our room, and in hindsight, I gotta tell you that this was one of the longest journeys I remember, and it would take about a day or so to recuperate fully from that. Our place seemed very comfortable at first glance, aside from the 4 sets of stairs perhaps. We had a really good sleep that night. The following day was going to be a Saturday. I would have to unpack the bikes and we'd have to get some essentials aside from exploring our immediate surroundings. I'll tell you about that and our first experience riding our bicycles in Bogota, Colombia's capital and a city of over 7 million inhabitants. Join me for that next week. And before you go, do me a favor and hit the like button. I'd be honored to welcome you as a subscriber if you haven't subscribed yet. You may also like the video on the screen right now, and I will see you soon.